It's a story of power, betrayal, and political demise, one that could rival Shakespearean drama in its intrigue and treachery. Rishi Sunak, once hailed as the rising star of the Conservative Party, is now watching his political future crumble before his very eyes. The price of backstabbing Boris Johnson has proven to be far higher than he ever imagined. But how did Sunak, once the darling of the Tory base, find himself in this catastrophic downfall? Buckle up, because we're about to unravel the scandalous details that could define British politics for years to come. Before we dive deeper into this political scandal, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Stay tuned for more jaw-dropping stories from inside the halls of power. You won't want to miss the next twist in this unfolding drama. The rise of Rishi Sunak was swift and dazzling. In 2020, when Boris Johnson made Sunak Chancellor of the Exchequer, it seemed like the political match of a lifetime. Sunak was young, polished, and had the backing of the financial world. Together with Boris, they were supposed to be the ultimate team to lead the UK through turbulent waters, the pandemic, Brexit, and beyond. But beneath the surface of this political power couple, cracks were already forming. Boris Johnson was fighting fires on multiple fronts: Partygate, accusations of cronyism, and a media that seemed bent on his destruction. Throughout it all, he had a loyal inner circle, but one man's ambition would soon tear it all apart. That man? Rishi Sunak. Sunak's move to turn on Boris shocked many in the Conservative Party. For months, the former Chancellor had been plotting in the shadows, biding his time as the public face of fiscal stability, all while carefully crafting his exit strategy. It's said that Sunak had his eyes on the top job long before the storm clouds gathered over Boris's tenure. But when Boris became too weakened by scandals to withstand the pressure, Sunak pounced. His resignation from the cabinet in 2022 was the final blow that brought Boris's premiership crashing down. But what Sunak didn't expect was the backlash that followed. Tory members, who had rallied behind Boris through thick and thin, saw Sunak's resignation as the ultimate betrayal. He was branded a traitor by the grassroots, accused of stabbing the Prime Minister in the back when he was at his weakest. Conservative members, who once praised Sunak's economic leadership during COVID-19, now viewed him as a turncoat. Despite orchestrating Boris Johnson's downfall, Sunak found himself on the losing end of the leadership contest that followed. Tory members overwhelmingly voted for Liz Truss, rejecting Sunak's bid for the leadership in what can only be described as an act of vengeance for betraying Boris. It was a dramatic fall from grace for a man who had once been seen as the future of the Conservative Party. Sunak eventually became Prime Minister after Truss's disastrous 49-day tenure, but the damage was already done. His leadership, marred from the start, was never able to recover from the reputation of betrayal. Conservative MPs and party members alike questioned his loyalty and viewed him as untrustworthy, a man who had put personal ambition above party unity. The political price of betraying Boris Johnson was steep, and Sunak's fall from the top only continued to accelerate. The once popular Chancellor had underestimated the wrath of the Conservative base. His approval ratings tanked, and whispers of rebellion grew louder within Tory ranks. Brexit hardliners, still fiercely loyal to Boris, began rallying against Sunak, blaming him for the Conservative Party's declining fortunes. And if you thought Sunak's troubles ended there, think again. The rise of the Reform Party posed an additional threat to his leadership. Voters, disillusioned by Sunak's leadership and betrayal, flocked to Reform, further eating into the Conservative base. The party's support splintered, and the polls began to show the Conservatives losing ground to both Reform and Labour. Sunak found himself facing rebellion not just from voters, but also within his own party. The Tory civil war, once simmering under the surface, was now out in the open. Brexiteer MPs, furious with Sunak's approach to post-Brexit governance and his refusal to take a harder line on immigration, began plotting to oust him. The very same MPs who had stood by Boris Johnson were now sharpening their knives for Sunak. But what if Sunak had made a different choice? What if he had remained loyal to Boris Johnson, standing by his side through the scandals and crises? The Conservative Party might have been able to rally behind a united front. Sunak could have positioned himself as Boris's natural successor, inheriting a party that was still largely intact. Instead, his political ambition blinded him to the dangers of betraying a leader like Boris Johnson, whose popularity with the grassroots was unparalleled. Had Sunak stayed loyal, it's possible that Boris Johnson could have led the Conservative Party to another victory in the 2024 general election. Sunak, still serving as Chancellor, could have claimed a share of the credit for that victory. His political future would have been secure, and when Boris finally stepped down, Sunak could have taken the reins without the stench of betrayal hanging over him. Instead, Sunak's legacy will be forever tainted by the perception that he betrayed the very man who elevated him to power. The man who once held the keys to number 10 is now watching as his political career crumbles. His downfall, ironically, mirrors that of Boris Johnson, brought low by scandal and betrayal. Now, as the Conservative Party faces its most uncertain future in decades, the question on everyone's mind is, what comes next? Will Rishi Sunak be able to hang on as Prime Minister, or will the Tory rebels succeed in ousting him before the next general election? And, most tantalisingly, could Boris Johnson be planning a comeback? It's no secret that Boris still has a loyal following within the Conservative Party, and there are rumours swirling that he is quietly laying the groundwork for his return. Supporters believe that Boris is the only figure who can unite the party and fend off the rising threat from Reform and Labour. Sunak's failure has only bolstered the argument that the Tories need a charismatic leader like Boris to bring them back from the brink. As for Sunak, the whispers of his potential departure are growing louder. Insiders say he is eyeing a move back to California, where he and his wife previously lived. Could this be the escape plan for a man whose political ambitions have crashed and burned? If Sunak does flee the political battlefield for the sunny shores of California, it will be seen as the final act of a Prime Minister who couldn't handle the pressure. Whatever the future holds, one thing is certain. The betrayal of Boris Johnson will be the defining moment of Rishi Sunak's political career. His decision to turn on the Prime Minister has cost him dearly, and the consequences will be felt not just by Sunak, but by the entire Conservative Party for years to come. As the Tory civil war rages on, the party is hurtling towards a leadership crisis. Names like Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are already being floated as potential replacements for Sunak. But will any of them be able to save the Tories from electoral disaster? Or will Boris Johnson, the man Sunak betrayed, stage the ultimate political comeback? Whatever happens, this political drama is far from over. Stay tuned for more explosive revelations, power plays, and betrayals as the Conservative Party navigates its most turbulent period in modern history.